Hi, I'm Jack. Welcome back to my channel in a new video. Getting back to the Saw franchise today, we're looking at reviewing Saw 2. And the story of this one is following this detective Eric Matthews, who has his son and a group of other people kidnapped once again by this Jigsaw killer and locked away in this house, and he has to find a way to free them. So we had Darren Lynn Bousman directing here, but we still had Leigh Whannell down as a writer. And I really think, to be honest, these first few Saw films, when you had Leigh Whannell writing, they were just the stronger entries for me. I haven't actually revisited the sequels just yet, but from what my memory tells me, these were much better films. And they obviously did lose something when they got these new scriptwriters on board. So Saw 2, don't get me wrong, it's still a very, very strong entry in the franchise. I think it's a decent film. I enjoyed it this time around, pretty much just the same as I did the first time that I saw it. But again, like the first film, once you start to dig a little bit and start thinking about a lot of the plot here, again, because these Saw films are ambitious with their plot, they welcome criticism. You do start to run into a lot of those plot holes and issues that I have with the story here. Don't get me wrong, enjoyable film, but a lot to talk about here, so let's get into it. So getting into the good stuff first, I do really like here that they went a slightly different direction to the first film. You know, it doesn't just feel like they're rehashing it and doing the same thing again. You kind of starting to do this new thing here that the Saw films are mostly known for, where you have the police investigation going on at the same time as this group are start going through all of these traps. And I think the one that this one does that the best is because you do get that chance to be up close and personal with Jigsaw, you know, getting to know him, understanding his philosophy. And whereas in the first film they played him as this very mysterious character, you know, very little about him, in this one they take a completely different approach and he's front and centre for the whole film. And that does make for a very interesting angle to go from. And I think as well, just because Tobin Bell, a very intriguing actor, perfect for this role of Jigsaw, you know, he plays the sinister side very well, and you're someone you're just interested to watch and hear what he comes out with. So I do find this part, especially in this side when you've got all the police stuff going on, I found that really quite engaging when we spend so much time with Jigsaw. I think as well as that, the film is just generally, you know, quite adrenaline filled. It's pretty exciting. Just watching this horrific situation play out. It's all very fast paced. It's directed well. It's got a pretty good atmosphere. So just the way the whole film plays out, I do really like going on the ride of it. And I think as well, just like the first film, which I won't spoil here just in case you've never seen it, but it also has an incredible twist ending. And it's one that the first time, I don't believe people saw this one coming. It's a really clever twist, and it's funny watching it again because I did remember what it was, and just seeing all the little details there that it's kind of like, it feels obvious when you know, but the first time watching this, it's brilliantly done. Very, very clever twist, so I have to give it massive credit for that. A lot of very memorable traps here as well, I'm sure, for a lot of people. Everyone's going to remember the needle trap that Amanda is in. Wow. Even watching that now, I just can't help but wince. I love when it's going on. All the characters are even struggling to watch it, like, oh God. It looks horrible. So yeah, there's a lot of kind of very memorable traps, I think, in this film, especially the needle pit. That's always stuck with me and just looks absolutely horrific. And obviously, of course, you get Amanda going through this trap. And I think she was an interesting character to bring back to this film because I like that obviously with Saw, you kind of got that feeling that you know you're going to get that twist ending. But I did like always that they had this little element of mystery in the middle where you don't know the intentions of a character. And say with Amanda, it's like, why is she back here? What's she up to? Does she know more than she's letting on? And it was just very interesting to see where the story direction would go with her. And I think on top of that as well, I do just find her quite a good character. I like her chemistry and the relationship she starts to build with Eric's son. Whilst they're both in this situation, she kind of ends up being like a friend and a protector for him whilst they're in here. And obviously I don't want to give away the spoilers of what's going on there, but I really liked that kind of element of the film in the story here. I do have to give this one credit here for effectively being the one to start this Saw formula. But obviously because I've already seen all of the rest of the films, I couldn't help but notice, just that obvious tick box that this Saw film set up, where you had to start with the trap that somebody wouldn't escape and would die a gnarly death. You then have the police investigation going on in some scenes, and at the same time you've got the group going through the traps. You finish off with the twist ending, and then you've got the really loud 2000s rock song in the credits. And it's just funny that watching this now, it just really doesn't feel fresh when you had so many of these that all followed that exact same formula. It's actually just kind of funny how repetitive these films ended up being. But as I said, this one was the first to do it, so I have to give it credit for that. So now we get into the problems with Saw 2, and once again we have my issues with Jigsaw and his preaching about his philosophy that I just do not think is consistent with the actions that he carries out. To me, Eric's whole game here, again, not trying to spoil anything, but Eric's whole game is effectively trickery. It's not really putting him through a situation where he has to actually do something and prove his will to survive and to save his son. He is effectively being tricked in a way where I don't know how Jigsaw expects him to see what he should do in this situation. Because obviously you've got this scenario where his son has been locked away and Jigsaw tells Eric, you have 2 hours and all I need you to do is talk to me. That's your only task. That's your game, effectively, when the game begins for him. And it's not like his other games that he does where it kind of gives him a clear layout of what he needs to do and shows the pain or whatever he needs to go through to get out of it. This is not like that. And I feel like, again, almost tricking somebody just doesn't really feel consistent with the rest of the stuff that Jigsaw sets up for other characters throughout these Saw films. So I've always had a bit of an issue with that. Again, when you go into it as well more about how he doesn't really kill people, which I think is ridiculous, to be honest. When you really look at what's going on here, okay, some of them are traps they can get out, but there's a number of things which he just still can't really answer for. The fact that when they're first going in to the lair where he's working, and they have the kind of trap that basically takes off the police officer's legs. When I'm watching that, I'm like, what is that for? Is that necessary? Even if you didn't kill the guy, when you've got this seemingly higher level of morality and justice and fairness and everything like this, a police officer doing his job and gets rewarded with that, to me, again, it just feels ridiculous and not. And Jigsaw, to me, when he's saying all this really preachy stuff and he's also doing like stuff like that, I just end up feeling very frustrated with the character. As well, on top of that, you've got him talking quite a lot in this film about his illness. Obviously, he has this terminal cancer, and obviously that is awful. But being that he is a much older guy and is dying of cancer, and he talks about it though like it's literally the worst thing on the planet, whereas at the same time he's got Eric's son, who is, okay, he's a bit of a delinquent, but he's just a troubled teenager. And from the story we get of him, he's quite a nice, reasonable person. He's obviously just troubled by his parents' divorce and all this kind of stuff going on, his angry father and all this kind of stuff going on. But he's basically put him in a house with this group of people who almost are fighting to the death to get these antidotes. He's going to be caught up in this. You've got this nerve agent going in, which is likely going to kill all of them. That, to me, is a much worse fate than have an old guy having cancer. So he kind of ends up doing a lot of speeches about how he can't be fixed and how awful it is. And it is awful, but to me, compared to what he's actually putting his victims through, it's just nowhere near as bad. So again, I just have a bit of, it feels like the film wants me to get on side with Jigsaw, especially because he's dealing with Eric Matthews, who's this really angry guy who just can't see the wood through the trees. He's just so blinded by rage. He's going off on one. So I feel like the film wants you to side or at least see things from Jigsaw's perspective. But I felt like I did the first time when I was younger, when I used to watch this. But watching it now, I just can't get there with this character. That being said as well, even with Eric Matthews, I think he's quite a good character in the way that he's written for the film. And, you know, Donnie Wahlberg's a good actor, so I do buy his performance of this, you know, just this rage-filled guy who's, you know, he's kind of tired of his police work. He's going through a divorce. He's got his son going. He's just a guy that's just pent up with all this stress and anger. And it all culminates in this situation with Jigsaw. But to me, there's even still things about him that I found unbelievable and kind of frustrating in a way about his character, where, you know, not talking about the anger stuff here, but just when they first walk in, the other police detectives kind of talk about him as this expert detective who he was the man that if he was on top of these cases when he was at his peak and everything. And when they first walk into Jigsaw's lair and he kind of walks up to Jigsaw really arrogantly and says, "Oh, I've got you now," all that kind of stuff to me just seems so deluded. Like, you've just walked into this guy's lair, he's basically welcomed you in. Clearly something very crazy has just gone down where a police officer's basically just had his legs completely cut off. Jigsaw looks completely calm, like he's expecting all of this. And this guy is arrogant enough to think that he's got this all under control, even though he's known to be this very experienced, you know, insightful detective. I'm just not buying it. And again, at the end as well, obviously he gets so angry at the end and just can't make sense of what's going to happen. Obviously he's so desperate to fix things with his son. Obviously in this fit of rage, he just starts kicking off and destroying everything and beating Jigsaw almost to death. But to me, it feels like this guy that, even though, yeah, he's filled with rage, he should know at this point that he's fucked, that he's got no chance of surviving this situation, I feel like, because he can see by this, he's seen by this point the insight that Jigsaw has, and, you know, how many steps ahead of this entire police force that this guy really is. You know, he's thought of absolutely everything. And when he kicks off, why does he not think, you know, Jigsaw is going to predict that he's going to act in this way. You are never going to overcome this situation. So for me, as a very experienced detective, even given his situation in the anger, I always just struggle to buy that this character would just react in this way. You know, to me, threatening Jigsaw with violence was never going to work. And I don't believe that this character would have thought that either. So yeah, that's all I'll say on Saw 2. Again, I don't want to go into too much detail just in case you've never seen these. I want to keep them relatively spoiler free, just because if you haven't seen the Saw films before, you know, they've got a lot of twists and stuff in them. So if you're watching this as like a recommend to you, I definitely want you to go into them blind and just kind of watch them and let the twists reveal themselves, because that's kind of a lot of the fun of these movies, kind of working out what the twist is going to be. So that's a lot of the enjoyment of the experience, I think, with these Saw films. And again, it might sound like I've been a little bit negative, but don't get me wrong, this is still a lot of fun. I get a lot of nostalgia for these early Saw films. It's still a pretty exciting horror film, perfect for a late Friday night. You can't go too wrong with Saw 2. So I'm going to give this one a 3 out of 5 rating. So thanks very much for watching my review of Saw 2. Please do let me know in the comments what you think of the movie if you've seen it. Please like and subscribe if you've been enjoying my content, and I'll see you next time.